Okay, so this is Mr. Wyrick. I'm going to go through the semester exam review, just part one on this video. First off, the synthetic division. The first thing you got to do is you got to take the little part over here to the side, and you're going to figure out what's going to make that 0. So on this first one, the x plus 1, it's a -1 that goes up here in the box. It's a -3 over here in the box. It's a -5 over here in the box. This would be a +1, a +3, and a +4. After that, what you're going to do is, in order with descending exponents, you're going to list the coefficients. So in this one, it's already in order. It's 1x to the third, 3x squared, a -4x, and a -12. On this one, again, it's in order. 1x to the third, 2x squared, a -33x, and a -90. On ones like this, you have to be careful because it's missing one. So that's a 1x cubed, a -6x squared, a 0x. You have to have that placeholder, and then a +32. So on any single one of these, doesn't matter which one, you're going to bring down that number first. So we bring it down, we multiply it back this way, and put the result right here. Then we combine these top to bottom, and whatever you get, you multiply it back up here and put the result over here. So then when you get this, you're going to multiply it back this way and put the result right here. As long as this last number is 0, that means you don't have any kind of remainder. So we're looking at, on this one, a 1x squared minus 3x minus 18 is what we'll get. Since this is going to be a multiple choice test, just remember that you can always take the answers and FOIL or multiply them back together and check on them to see if you got the thing right that way. Sum of cubes, difference of cubes. We had some difficulty with this one, and I'm not real sure why. Really, it's just about, like, this is a cubed, this is b cubed, and either one of them, adding or subtracting, it doesn't matter. So you find the cube root. The cube root of x to the third is just x. The cube root of 64 is 4. The cube root of 125 is 5. I put my parentheses around those. X squared is x squared. 4 squared is 16. And then 4 times x is 4x. Since this one is plus, it goes plus, minus, plus in between them. On this one, the x squared is x squared. The 5 squared is 25. And 5 times x is 5x. Since this one is minus, it goes minus, plus, plus. It just has to fit the pattern of these things. And again, this is going to be a multiple choice test. You ought to be able to FOIL or multiply these back together to check on them. In the next section, it's composite equations. So this little O looking thing here is really just the word of. So when you read it, it's f of g of 3, meaning you're going to work from the inside out. Okay? You take the one that's closer to the number, you do that, and then whatever the result is, you're going to put it into the other one. So over here where we have g of -1, well, it's f of g of -1. I'm going to do just g of -1. That's -1 minus 7 over a -1. That's -8 over -1, which is just 8. I'm going to take that 8 and put that into f of x. So that's 8 squared minus 3 times 8. That's 64 minus 24, which is 40. That's my answer. You ought to be able to type these into the calculator, actually, as they appear. So you could say 1 minus 7 over -1, and then take that and square it, minus 3 times 1 minus 7 over -1. As long as you enter it correctly, you don't have to do any of the math yourself. And again, you can check the answers to see what you get. On the inverse of a function, it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to pick one of the ones that seems a little more difficult. Actually, I'll contrast 23 and 24. This is y equals parentheses 2x minus 7 squared. I switch the x and the y. X equals parentheses 2y minus 7 squared. So in order to start solving this, I'm going to take the square root to get rid of the squared. That's square root of x is equal to 2y minus 7. I'm going to add 7 to it, so that's square root of x plus 7 on the outside is equal to 2y. I'm going to divide by 2, so I get the square root of x plus 7 all over 2, and that would be y equals, but I'm going to use the notation that they have here, the inverse of f of x. F to the -1 of x is x plus 7 over 2. Not to be confused with this one here. The squared is on just the x here. So this is going to be x is equal to a -2 y squared plus 5. I start by subtracting 5. that's x minus 5 equals a negative 2y squared. I divide by a negative 2, so that's x minus 5 over negative 2, and then that's y squared, which means I'm going to take plus or minus the square root of x minus 5 over 2 to get the inverse of f of x. Again, multiple choice test. The way to check this one is graph both of them, and they should reflect across y equals x. So on this one with the 2x minus 7 squared, it should be something like this. The reflection should be something like that, as long as you have like the plus or minus on there. And then that's it for part 1. I'll get new videos for parts 2 and 3.